Welcome back. I'm Logan, your host for the Daily Bible Reading Podcast, where we are journeying through the Bible chronologically, taking it one day at a time. Congratulations on making it through 2 full months. Today is day number 60, and we're going to be looking at Numbers chapter 14 and 15, as well as Psalm 90. We're going to get our first psalm today. So we'll talk about all of that, but first, let's pray before we get started. Today's prayer is entitled Caring Love, and it can be found in The Valley of Vision, a collection of Puritan prayers and devotions by Arthur Bennett. All-sufficient King, when I come into thy presence, I see the glory of thy perfections. The throne of eternal and universal empire, the 10,000 times 10,000 who minister to thee. Impress my mind with the consciousness of thy greatness, not to drive me from thee, but to inspire me to approach thee. Not to diminish my confidence in thee, but to lead me to admire thy great condescension. Thou hast been mindful of me and visited me, taken charge of me from birth, cared in all conditions for me, fed me at thy table, drawn the curtains of love around me, given me new mercies every morning. Suffer me not to forget that I look for yet greater blessings, a hope beyond the grave, the earnest and foretastes of immortality, holiness, wisdom, strength, peace, joy. All these thou hast provided for me in Christ. I grieve to think how insensible I have been of the claims of thy authority and the endearments of thy love. How little I have credited thy truth, trusted thy promises, feared thy threats, obeyed thy commands, improved my advantages, welcomed thy warnings, and responded to thy grace. But notwithstanding my desert, I yet live. May thy goodness always lead me to repentance, and thy long suffering prove my salvation. All right, let's get into it. Here's Numbers chapter 14 and 15, and then we will wrap up today with Psalm 90. So here we go. Chapter 14. Then all the congregation raised a loud cry, and the people wept that night. And all the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The whole congregation said to them, "Would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or that we had died in this wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become a prey. Would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt?" And they said to one another, "Let us choose a leader and go back to Egypt." Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of the people of Israel, and Joshua the son of Nun, and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes, and said to all the congregation of the people of Israel, "The land which we passed through to spy it out is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord delights in us, he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land that flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of the land, for they are bread for us. Their protection is removed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them." Then all the congregation said to stone them with stones. But the glory of the Lord appeared at the tent of meeting to all the people of Israel. And the Lord said to Moses, "How long will this people despise me? And how long will they not believe in me, in spite of all the signs that I have done among them? I will strike them with the pestilence, and disinherit them, and I will make of you a nation greater and mightier than they." But Moses said to the Lord, "Then the Egyptians will hear of it, for you brought up this people in your might from among them. And they will tell the inhabitants of this land, 'They have heard that you, O Lord, are in the midst of this people. For you, O Lord, are seen face to face, and your cloud stands over them, and you go before them in a pillar of cloud by day, and in a pillar of fire by night.' Now if you kill this people as one man, then the nations who have heard your fame will say, 'It is because the Lord was not able to bring this people into the land that he swore to give them, that he has killed them in the wilderness. And now, please let the power of the Lord be great as you have promised, saying, The Lord is slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love, forgiving iniquity and transgression. But he will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and the fourth generation. Please pardon the iniquity of this people, according to the greatness of your steadfast love, just as you have forgiven this people from Egypt until now." Then the Lord said, "I have pardoned, according to your word. But truly, as I live, and as all the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord, none of the men who have seen my glory and my signs that I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and yet have put me to the test these 10 times, and have not obeyed my voice, shall see the land that I swore to give to their fathers. And none of those who despised me shall see it. But my servant Caleb, because he has a different spirit and has followed me fully, I will bring into the land into which he went, and his descendants shall possess it. Now, since the Amalekites and the Canaanites dwell in the valleys, turn tomorrow and set out for the wilderness by the way to the Red Sea." And the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, "How long shall this wicked congregation grumble against me? I have heard the grumblings of the people of Israel, which they grumble against me. Say to them, 'As I live, declares the Lord, what you have said in my hearing, I will do to you. Your dead bodies shall fall in this wilderness, and of all your number listed in the census from 20 years and upward who have grumbled against me, not one shall come into the land where I swore that I would make you dwell, except Caleb the son of Jephunneh and Joshua the son of Nun. But your little ones, who you said would become a prey, I will bring in, and they shall know the land that you have rejected. But as for you, your dead bodies shall fall in this wilderness, and your children shall be shepherds in the wilderness 40 years, and shall suffer for your faithlessness until the last of your dead bodies lies in the wilderness. According to the number of the days in which you spied out the land, 40 days, a year for each day, you shall bear your iniquity 40 years, and you shall know my displeasure. I, the Lord, have spoken. Surely this I will do to all this wicked congregation who are gathered together against me. In this wilderness they shall come to a full end, and there they shall die." And the men whom Moses sent to spy out the land, who returned and made all the congregation grumble against him by bringing up a bad report about the land, the men who brought up a bad report of the land died by plague before the Lord. Of those men who went to spy out the land, only Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh remained alive. When Moses told these words to all the people of Israel, the people mourned greatly. And they rose early in the morning and went up to the heights of the hill country, saying, "Here we are. We will go up to the place that the Lord has promised, for we have sinned." But Moses said, "Why now are you transgressing the command of the Lord, when that will not succeed? Do not go up, for the Lord is not among you, lest you be struck down before your enemies. For there the Amalekites and the Canaanites are facing you, and you shall fall by the sword. Because you have turned back from following the Lord will not be with you." But they presumed to go up to the heights of the hill country, although neither the ark of the covenant of the Lord nor Moses departed out of the camp. Then the Amalekites and the Canaanites who lived in that hill country came down and defeated them and pursued them even to Hormah. Chapter 15. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel, and say to them, When you come into the land you are to inhabit, which I am giving you, and you offer to the Lord from the herd or from the flock a food offering, or a burnt offering, or a sacrifice, to fulfill a vow, or as a freewill offering, or at your appointed feasts, to make a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Then he who brings his offering shall offer to the Lord a grain offering of 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour, mixed with 1/4 of a hin of oil. And you shall offer with the burnt offering, or for the sacrifice, 1/4 of a hin of wine for the drink offering for each lamb. Or for a ram you shall offer for a grain offering 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour, mixed with 1/3 of a hin of oil. And for the drink offering you shall offer 1/3 of a hin of wine, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. And when you offer a bull as a burnt offering or sacrifice, to fulfill a vow, or for peace offerings to the Lord, then one shall offer with the bull a grain offering of 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour, mixed with 1/2 a hin of oil. And you shall offer for the drink offering 1/2 a hin of wine, as a food offering, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Thus it shall be done for each bull or ram, or for each lamb or young goat. As many as you offer, so shall you do with each one, as many as there are. Every native Israelite shall do these things in this way, in offering a food offering with a pleasing aroma to the Lord. And if a stranger is sojourning with you, or anyone is living permanently among you, and he wishes to offer a food offering with a pleasing aroma to the Lord, he shall do as you do. For the assembly there shall be one statute for you and for the stranger who sojourns with you, a statute forever throughout your generations. You and the sojourner shall be alike before the Lord. One law and one rule shall be for you and for the stranger who sojourns with you." The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel, and say to them, When you come into the land to which I bring you, and when you eat of the bread of the land, you shall present a contribution to the Lord. Of the first of your dough you shall present a loaf as a contribution, like a contribution from the threshing floor. So shall you present it. Some of the first of your dough you shall give to the Lord as a contribution throughout your generations. But if you sin unintentionally, and do not observe all these commandments that the Lord has spoken to Moses, all that the Lord has commanded you by Moses, from the day that the Lord gave commandment and onward throughout your generations, then if it was done unintentionally, without the knowledge of the congregation, all the congregation shall offer one bull from the herd for a burnt offering, a pleasing aroma to the Lord, with its grain offering and its drink offering, according to the rule, and one male goat for a sin offering. And the priest shall make atonement for all the congregation of the people of Israel, and they shall be forgiven, because it was a mistake, and they have brought their offering, a food offering to the Lord, and their sin offering before the Lord for their mistake. And all the congregation of the people of Israel shall be forgiven, and the stranger who sojourns among them, because the whole population was involved in the mistake. If one person sins unintentionally, he shall offer a female goat, a year old, for a sin offering, and the priest shall make atonement before the Lord for the person who makes a mistake, when he sins unintentionally, to make atonement for him, and he shall be forgiven. You shall have one law for him who does anything unintentionally, for him who is native among the people of Israel, and for the stranger who sojourns among them. But the person who does anything with a high hand, whether he is native or a sojourner, reviles the Lord, and that person shall be cut off from among his people, because he has despised the word of the Lord, and has broken his commandment. That person shall be utterly cut off. His iniquity shall be on him. While the people of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man gathering sticks on the Sabbath day. And those who found him gathering sticks brought him to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation. They put him in custody, because it had not been made clear what should be done to him. And the Lord said to Moses, "The man shall be put to death. all the congregation shall stone him with stones outside the camp. And all the congregation brought him outside the camp and stoned him to death with stones, as the Lord commanded Moses. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the people of Israel, and tell them to make tassels on the corners of their garments throughout their generations, and to put a cord of blue on the tassel of each corner. And it shall be a tassel for you to look at and remember all the commandments of the Lord, to do them, not to follow after your own heart and your own eyes, which you are inclined to whore after. So you shall remember and do all my commandments, and be holy to your God. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, to be your God. I am the Lord your God." Psalm 90. A prayer of Moses, the man of God. Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. You return man to dust, and say, "Return, O children of man. For 1,000 years in your sight are but as yesterday when it is past, or as a watch in the night. You sweep them away as with a flood. They are like a dream, like grass that is renewed in the morning. In the morning it flourishes and is renewed. In the evening it fades and withers. For we are brought to an end by your anger. By your wrath we are dismayed. You have set our iniquities before you, our secret sins in the light of your presence. For all our days pass away under your wrath. We bring our years to an end like a sigh. The years of our life are 70, or even by reason of strength 80. Yet their span is but toil and trouble. They are soon gone, and we fly away. Who considers the power of your anger and your wrath according to the fear of you? So teach us to number our days, that we may get a heart of wisdom. Return, O Lord. How long? Have pity on your servants. Satisfy us in the morning with your steadfast love, that we may rejoice and be glad all our days. Make us glad for as many days as you have afflicted us, and for as many years as we have seen evil. Let your work be shown to your servants, and your glorious power to their children. Let the favor of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish the work of your hands upon us. Yes, establish the work of our hands. Before I get started looking at these passages, I wanted to let you know that the Daily Bible Reading Podcast is now on YouTube. I've posted some of the back episodes there, but moving forward, the daily reading will be posted there soon after it shows up everywhere else. This will also be a great place for public discussion of the daily podcast. Comments are turned on, so if you have questions or you want to invite a friend, share one of these videos. Now, yesterday, we saw the report that the majority of the spies brought back from the land. They said that there was no way that they could take the land because the people were way too big and scary. But Joshua and Caleb both said that with God going before them, they could easily take the land. Now, this argument continues in chapter 14, and the people gripe against Moses and Aaron and their general state of affairs. They seem to think that it would be better to die, whether in Egypt or there in the wilderness. A little foreshadowing here, because God is going to grant them this wish. Now, it gets so bad at one point that the people start picking up stones and laying hands on Moses and Joshua to stone them. But again, just like God came to Moses' defense yesterday, he does the same thing here, and he shows up and disrupts things. Here, God announces that he is going to disinherit the people and wipe them out and start over again with Moses. Sounds pretty similar to what he said back in Exodus 32, right? When the people worship the golden calf. But as he did then, so Moses is going to do now. He talks to God, He speaks God's words back to God, asking for God's continued grace and mercy. And God relents yet again, but not totally. He announces that he will wipe out the whole generation who is disobedient. All the 600,000 plus people that were listed on the census that we talked about earlier, except for Caleb and Joshua. Now there's a little note here. This amount would not have included likely women, foreigners, children under 20, or anyone from the tribe of Levi. None of these were part of that census. However, many of those during these 40 years are going to die as well. But this is a pretty complete destruction. 40 years of wilderness living, waiting until the time when all of them have died. Their children, whom they accused God of wanting to kill in the desert, God announces those children will inherit the land, and they will be led in by Joshua and Caleb. Now, the next day, the people have changed their minds. Oh, they don't like the idea of everyone being wiped out in the wilderness, so they decide that they're going to go ahead with the attack on the land. However, this is too little too late. Moses tells them that now, if they go ahead with an attack, they will fail because God is not with them. And so many of the Israelites are beaten because they went ahead and they did something without God's blessing. I see in this the idea that God isn't just giving them a checklist of things to do and not to do. It's about relationship with Him. Otherwise, they would have been rewarded by coming to their senses and returning and being obedient even if it was a day late. Instead, the point of God's frustration is that the people continue to want the blessings of God, but could really care less about actually having communion with God. Imagine setting up a date to meet someone for dinner, and you sit and you wait for them, and they never show up. They stood you up. And then you see them a few days later, and they comment on how good dinner was. And you say, what are you talking about? And they said, yeah, I went to dinner, and I had a great meal at this restaurant. Didn't you go as well? And you say, no, I didn't go. You stood me up. Well, one of you is talking about a relationship, and the other one is just talking about getting your belly filled. Well, here, the Israelites just want to eat a meal. No regard for your date, no regard for the relationship or the person that's there, just eating a meal. If we simply look at the Christian faith as a moral rule book that we must eventually coalesce to, then we've missed the whole point, the whole idea. It's about achieving perfect fellowship and harmony with this God who we stand at odds with. As we roll into chapter 15, this is why we start to see them talking about sacrifices being offered and what should be done about unintentional sin. But it is clear in verse 30 that the high-handed sin or intentional sin of the kind that we see here in this passage and in tomorrow's reading with Korah's rebellion is not covered by any sacrifice. That is, until Jesus comes. The scandalous thing about God's grace in Jesus Christ is that He brought His enemies, those who reviled Him and despised Him. He brought them near. And as I say them, I'm pointing to myself. He brought me near. And instead of my iniquity resting on my own head, like it says in verse 31, Jesus bore my sin to the cross, and He took the just wrath of God against my sin. And if you trust in Him, your sin as well. Some people look at the story of the Sabbath breaker as a case of literal overkill. But take note that it is illustrating the point that high-handed sin, like a blatant and open disobedience of God's laws, deserves a punishment of death. We see this in Romans chapter 3:23 and 6:23. We are all sinners. blatant and high-handed. And the appropriate payment for my sin is death. Don't soft pedal this and try to make God look better. When we see God's holiness in its proper light, it should shine a light on our imperfections and reveal our need for a Savior. This is the only way of salvation. Christ is the only way. Don't miss it because you're so focused on checking the boxes. Don't show up to the restaurant 2 days late. Today is the day of salvation. Finally, here in Numbers for today, we get this, what almost feels like a throwaway section about blue tassels on the corners of garments as a reminder to the people to follow God and not their own hearts and their own eyes. Now remember, Jesus was the perfect fulfillment of all these laws. That means that he wore robes with these tassels, right? Do we see it anywhere in the Gospels? Of course we do. These tassels on the corners of the garments are called tzitzit, and they are still worn today by Orthodox Jews. And Jesus wore them. And we see in Matthew chapter 9, verse 20, among other places, that the crowds were coming around Jesus and they were seeking to try to touch the hem of his garment. Well, guess what? That is a tzitzit. That's the tassel that's hanging on the edge of his garment. They were hoping to be made clean by just coming close and touching Jesus. Do you feel that kind of connection to Jesus, that you just want to reach out and just be able to touch the hem of his garment? You want relationship with him that much that if you could just get close enough to touch? It's possible that these tassels could have played a part in the rebellion that we see tomorrow in Numbers chapter 16, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. For today, as we close, we get our first psalm. And as we read the Bible chronologically, we're going to begin to see psalms peppered throughout our reading as we have knowledge of some of their authors and their settings. Psalm 90 is the only psalm that we have attributed directly to Moses. And this is a beautiful psalm which encapsulates just the kind of depth of emotion that I'm sure Moses felt as he hid himself in God as his hiding place. Moses was satisfied in the steadfast love of God, even while the people around him were being brought to an end by God's anger and wrath. In verse 4, we see this mention of 1,000 years. And it's very possible that Peter was thinking about this psalm when he wrote in his letter in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8, that with the Lord a day is 1,000 years and 1,000 years is a day. And Moses here speaks wise words when he asks God to teach him to number his days in verse 12. I've included a link in the show notes to a video of this song being sung by Shane and Shane in a modern context. Remember that the Psalms are the first hymnal of the church. These are the prayers and the hymns and the worship songs from the hearts of believers to the glory of God. I hope you'll check out this song as part of your devotional time. Sing along, worship God as you cry out to him to satisfy you with his steadfast love today. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this has been encouraging to you. If so, please let me know by visiting the links that you find under the Connect With Us section in the show notes. I'm a simple man and I could use the encouragement. If you've been blessed enough that you would like to support the podcast, I would greatly appreciate that as well. You can go to buymeacoffee.com/DBR podcast to make either a one-time gift or to sign up for a monthly recurring membership gift. Until tomorrow, keep reading and keep worshiping.